affirmation that's at the top of the page there. Together, in one spirit, we see God everywhere, in everyone, and in everything. What a deal, huh? What do you mean, everywhere?
Everywhere. Even in the way.
In everyone, in everything. The Course in Miracles lesson concerning this says, God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. That'd be quite a controversial line in some quarters. Okay? So, has somebody brought the Sly and the Family Stone little clip? Tell me the good news. Tell me something good. Right? We gotta. It needs to come out like loud when I ask for good news. But I want some good news. Birthdays, anniversaries. What did I forget? Oh, not yet. Wait.
Oh, that you didn't forget.
Yeah, it's coming.
What about Mama?
Where's Momo? Sophie wanted to go outside because she was sure that Momo was out there.
Yeah,
She goes outside and she's going, looking around like, where's Momo?
She's having him.
Sebastian adopted Momo. No, it was a good idea.
It was a good idea?
Yes, good idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it okay if it takes
So-
a little bit for that to settle in?
This, I still want to know if there's any good news out there.
There is. Momo got a new home.
That is good news.
It is good.
Yes, it
The
is good
sun
news.
is shining really bright today.
It's a nice bright day, kind of picks the spirits up a little
We're
bit.
all here.
Yeah,
Not
some
all
of us.
us.
It's
Well,
okay.
those of us who are
That's all right.
here.
No, yes.
Everybody
yes.
else is here in spirit.
Yes.
Just
Well,
turn
mines
your
are joined,
finger.
right? Mines are joined. So, birthdays, anniversaries.
Paris is being put up for adoption, so she'll finally have
Oh,
a forever home.
that's good. That's good.
She's
I'm
on
gonna
the
talk now.
Okay. Hirings, firings.
I started community service at the Rockford Rescue Mission.
Oh, that's it. Hey, good job. Good job.
Thank you for your service.
Okay, so did you take the red pill or the blue pill today? Huh?
I did.
Right. So from the Matrix, you know what I'm talking about?
No, I took a Tylenol. It was red and blue.
Okay, both of them. You took both of them. So you're gonna be confused all day.
Amanda doesn't understand the joke.
So okay, so so this is what so Neil gets the choice in the movie that he can wake up to what reality really is by taking the red pill, or he can go back into the bliss of illusion by taking the blue pill.
That must be a Xanax.
So now, and the other thing to know about this movie, and the guy who wrote the movie wanted to make a movie about the Gnostic teachings. That were Gnostic teachings were the teachings that were written a little bit prior to Jesus and then a little bit after Jesus, and all of these writings were banned
Someone's giving me homework.
by the Roman Empire. But the whole idea of the Gnostic teachings were that the world that we observe is not the world that God created. That the world that we observe is a world that was created by a God that doesn't know God.
Wow.
And that God is identified very, very clearly in the analysis as the ego. So the world we observe is made by the ego.
Yeah.
And the ego is continually obscuring the real world. So what we want to do is we're going to take the red pill. which is this is like stepping. Just know this: when you take the red pill, just go watch the movie. Things get uncomfortable. Taking the blue pill, things remain. Let's just say, maybe they're not free of suffering, but they're like they're kind of familiar. You're kind of familiar. You know what's going to happen. You're used to it. So taking the red pill is about deciding to be mindful. Waking up. Having a spiritual awakening. Waking up. So we're going to talk more about that. First, prayer list. Who needs to be put on the prayer list?
Kim and Jaya.
Oh, okay.
Safe travels.
Bernardo. Lauren, she has cancer and a negative attitude.
Charles.
Bob.
Individual 1.
That's right. No kidding. No kidding. Prayers are needed there.
Brittany.
Starts with an I. I like it. I won. Right. I won. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna do a meditation. Right. Oh no. You know what? Let's have a little. This is Hafiz is our Sufi spokesperson. So we try to share a little bit from Hafiz. So Hafiz says, that does perish. That does perish. The earth would die if the sun stopped kissing her. Hafiz is now in such an exquisite world that perishes when God is not near. Covers her face with both hands. Let's talk about the sun and the moon. We'll talk about the moon a little bit right now. What we speak becomes the house we live in. What we speak becomes the house we live in. Who will want to sleep in your bed if the roof leaks right above it? Look what happens when the tongue cannot say to kindness, I will be your slave. The moon covers her face with both hands and can't bear to look. What's the date? What's the date? So let's get quiet and we'll do this meditation. Just relax right where we're at. Just pay a little bit of attention to how you're sitting. Just allow the seat to fully support your weight. I'm going to put your feet flat on the floor. Check your spine. Sit erect. As the Buddha said in a dignified manner, spine straight. Almost as if there was a string attached to the top of your head, pulling your spine straight and your shoulders back. Don't become tight or rigid, but just relax in this position. attend to your breath. No need to change it in any way. Just notice how it works. As you breathe in, you're filled. As you breathe out, you just naturally relax. Breathing in, you're filled with life. Breathing out, you relax into love. The light of God surrounds you. The love of God enfolds you. The presence of God goes with you wherever you go. See yourself now in that light. And say, I am living in the light. I'm living in the light. I'm truly alive. The life of God thrills in me and extends out from me as love, forgiveness. I extend that light to everyone I meet. And in every circumstance, I see myself going forth this day, touching every person that I meet, and everyone that I see, everyone that I just think about, touching them with this light and love of God. Every circumstance that I find myself in, I allow the light and love of God to interact with. I allow this light to lead the way. It is at home in my heart. But it has work to do in the world around me. You can see the very air around us is alive with the light of love. The kingdom of God is within and without. It's always shining. Sometimes we may be tempted to think of our hearts as having surfaces that in turn reflect this love back into the world, and it is instructive for us to examine the phenomena of sunlight striking the moon. It turns out that indeed the moon is not just reflecting, but interacting with the light, mixing with it, sending out something more than that which touched its surface. So the light of love can come to us, and when we send it back out, it has a different quality than when it came in. It has a little part of us in it. We say amen and amen. that Thanksgiving when everyone was around the dining room table and an argument broke out? That's one of the things we want to remember to forget. We have this subject comes up every 6 months or so. Comes up every day in life, but we talk about it once every 6 months. We've called it radical forgiveness. We've called it forgetfulness. So this is I remember way back we were doing a class on forgiveness and how it works, and someone in the class said, I get this, I just feel like I'm not very good at this forgiveness stuff, because even when I do it, when I do it, then like a week later, it comes back to me. I think I'm free of it. I think I've let it go, but then it comes back. And our teacher said, that just means you need to forgive again. So here's the thing: we all have, and I think it continues through life. We have regret, and we have resentment. Because life is not static, we're not just, even if we clear the decks of all these past things, we're always making past things. We're continually making past experiences as we go. And the other problem is the past experiences before, occasionally they come back. They come back to us like ghosts that haunt. So the practice is, it's so easy. See, ego just wants to say, you can't do this. You're not that kind of person. You're really not a forgiving person. I know the ego says that you wanna be. You pretend that you're a forgiving person, but we know, don't we, that you're really not capable, not even capable of doing it. One of the problems is we've got some confusion as to what forgiveness is. We think forgiveness is absolution of some kind. We think forgiveness is some kind of magnanimous gesture that we make that says, yeah, you really hurt me. You really did something wrong, but I'm going to shine it on. This is not forgiveness. This is some weak sister of forgiveness. Forgiveness is forgetfulness. Forgiveness is forgetting, truly forgetting that it ever happened. Because in reality, it didn't. Say, well, wait a minute. I did. It happened to me. I remember it. And there is no forgiveness because they don't deserve to be forgiven. They don't deserve to be forgiven for this and that and then the other thing, right? They don't deserve it. And it did happen. And the problem with that idea is that even if we discount what the Course in Miracles tells us is that all of these experiences that we're having are just illusion, that they're just like a movie that we're projecting, even if we discount that and we think that we actually come into some, we believe the world we see. We believe that it's real. Even if we do, we have to recognize the fact that the way we see the world is totally conditioned by how we think. And this is why, when you remember that Thanksgiving, where an argument broke out, and you talk to your family members about it, each one of them will have a different story. You may even think for a minute that you're both on the same page, but keep talking about it, and it'll change. So, because we're all making it up. We're all making up our own world. Now, you say, well, something happened. Something happened. Well, let's say that's a given. Something did happen. Something actually did happen. But the problem is the way I'm remembering it is not correct. because because it's colored by all of the other things that happened in the past. So what's the use? I mean, what's the use in continuing to ruminate? What's the use in continuing to bring these things to mind? Well, consciously, we probably know already that there's no use in it. But the problem is the ego keeps throwing it out there. The ego keeps throwing these things out there. And the reason, just a very simple reason why the ego does this is because it wants to maintain its existence. Because it wants to obscure the facts. It wants to keep calling attention to us living in a dangerous world where really everybody at one point or another is out to get us. You think, oh, that's a little extreme. I'm not that paranoid. But think back, every person in your life, even the person that you feel closest to, if you stick around long enough, they will do something that you think was injurious to you, or that they had a bad intention. And again, they may not even do it. They may not even do it, but we perceive that they did it. They say something and we go back to the file cabinet in our brain and compare it to past experiences, and all this is happening, in microseconds. And we come out with a picture and say, oh, what she said, that's just like this. That's just like this thing that happened back then. And then we gird ourselves for battle. So this is going on all the time. It's always going on, and it's happening. Sometimes it's happening at a conscious level. Sometimes it's happening below the surface, and we just feel like a sense of disquiet. We just feel a little anxiety rising up. We feel just a little bit of discomfort because these messages are playing at different levels in the brain. So what Neo is offered is the ability to wake up from that dream. To wake up and see, of course, when he wakes up, what he wakes up to is not pleasant. It's a rude awakening, right? It's a rude awakening. And so we have an ability to practice something that is just like taking the red pill. And it's called mindfulness. It's called meditation. See, here's the thing about meditation. There's a couple of different forms. And I think that we should practice it enough so that we can practice 4 or 5 different types of meditation and get to be comfortable with all of them. There's one type of meditation, the quieting of the mind, that leads to inner peace and a blissfulness and a lack of thought. And in those moments, we can attain conscious contact with the God of our understanding. And how we know we've done it is we feel totally at peace. We feel connected to life, and we have an overwhelming sense that everything is in order. So that's how we know that we've gotten to that place. But this is not the whole of mindfulness. Part of mindfulness is to be aware when we're not sitting on the cushion, when we're not sitting in our chair meditating. Part of this mindfulness practice is to realize the experiences that we are having, to become aware of everything that is happening, everything that we are experiencing. And this is just as important. So we can't be thinking of our meditation, our practice of meditation, as just being something that can make us feel good. Because then it just becomes the temptation that Jesus was warning about in the Lord's Prayer. And we'll talk about that later. That's not the only thing. But we need to do that. We should be practiced enough to be able to do that. Because that's the thing that reaffirms for us that we really are connected to God, that we really are connected to all of life. However, if we just sit and meditate and put ourselves in that quiet space and just stay there, we are, as the saying goes, of no earthly good. We can't help anybody from that position. Except, well, it's been said that just us sitting there peacefully helps everybody because it's sending some peace out into the world, right? So at least we're not out there causing chaos, right? So, but this idea of being mindful in the moment of what's happening, this is another whole thing. And because I need to be aware of what's happening right now, because I have to continue to forgive these pictures from the past that are causing me suffering and my brothers and sisters suffering. Because I need to, for my own spiritual unfoldment, for my own journey along the path, I need to be in the moment, in that dynamic decision-making process where I can, guided by the Holy Spirit, know what to do next. So I need to be aware of what's happening. I need to investigate. So what do we say? We say I need to recognize what's happening. I need to accept what's happening. I need to investigate where is this coming from? And then finally I need to realize it's not me. It's just an experience. So non-identification. It's just an experience that I'm having. So I recognize I'm having this experience of upset, of anger, of resentment. I just accept it. I don't say, Course in Miracles says this isn't real. This is not helpful for me to tell myself, well, the Course says this isn't real, just ignore it. Just ignoring it won't help. Even if I can push it out of my mind, it'll come back later in uglier ways. So instead, I accept it. I say, okay, it's a gift. This experience I'm having right now is a gift, and somewhere in it, there's an opportunity for good. Not that the situation itself is good, because it can be very unpleasant. And that's another thing I need to recognize. I'm not trying to coat it over with some candy kind of thing. I'm not trying to do some Pollyanna thing with it. I recognize this is painful. But what I need to know is somewhere in the situation is the opportunity for good. So I investigate. Where does this come from? Why? Why am I mad at this person right now? Why am I afraid? And if I sit quietly, even stand quietly, I can kind of track it back. This thought came from that thought, and that thought came from that thought. And I can see where it came from. It came from a belief. It came from a belief I had about myself. And ultimately, it comes from this one archetype belief that the ego is built upon. The total foundation of the ego is, I am alone. I am out here on my own. I am separated from life. And this ultimately is the thing that needs to be forgiven. So this forgetfulness that I'm talking about, this remember to forget. So here's what we want to remember. Remember to forget. Just keep that phrase in mind, but every time you think of it, think about this. Forgetting and forgiving is going back to the state of mind that we were in before the offense occurred. So if you're having an upset with somebody, just sit quietly for a moment and track back. How were you feeling about that person before they did the thing that you are now upset about? How are you? And then you go, wait a minute, I was already kind of, let's just say, peeved. I was already kind of upset with them. They've been acting. Go back farther then. And here's the thing: when we start to track this back, we realize that when we get to a certain point, we realize that we're kind of upset with everybody. A little bit. That's what we say is a little bit. But underneath the surface is that rage. There's a turmoil underneath the surface that is just ready to jump out. So I said, go back further. Go back further. I want to go back. Here's what I want. I want to go back to the point before I had the first thought that said that I was alone. I want to go back to the point where I had the first thought that said, I'm at odds with the world. I'm at odds with life. So where's that? Well, I'll tell you, it's right there on the wall. It's right there on the wall. You can look at it later. That picture represents this one above the prints. That's where we want to go back to. We want to go all the way back to the Big Bang, when this whole separation began to begin with. I know it's a crazy idea. Nuts, right? No, I'll tell you what's nuts. What's nuts is suffering because we think we're apart from life, when actually we are a part of life. What's nuts is thinking that our neighbor is against us. What's nuts is believing what the politicians who are so afraid of their own shadow are doing, spinning these crazy stories to keep themselves in power. That is also an illusion. This is nuts. We're nuts for believing it, and they're nuts for saying it. Forgiveness gets us out of it. If I realize this particular politician that I've now been vehemently against, I'm not really, because I see that not just one, but all of them are like me. They are just like me. Put me in that situation, right? Put me in the situation where I got a little bit of power. And I want to get a little bit more, because when I get a little bit more, it makes me feel more secure. It all grows out of the idea that we're separate. And it's so easy then, see, if I can cultivate this idea that we're separate, I can say to you, listen, these guys over here that don't look quite like us, these guys over here that don't speak like us, they're not like us. They are against us. And so we need to get together and be against them. And this is what starts the whole business. Now we need to understand, in doing our investigation, we can understand that these ideas arise out of a genetic imperative. Our genes started this stuff in our body because and I know a lot of people who say that how the genes operate is also a plan of the ego. But I don't have to go that far. What we know for sure is that as we evolved in a way to extend the genes. The genes just want to be passed on to the next generation. They actually don't care about us individually. They just want to be passed on to the next generation. But they fire all sorts of messages off in our brains that say, protect yourself, protect your clan, protect your little corner of the world. So what I've suggested now for some years is that this evolution, that we're kind of stuck with this evolution of the body. But now we have come to the point where we can consciously evolve past it. Because what's happened is the genes haven't caught up. They have not caught up with the message that we are actually killing the planet. So we've got to kind of take charge consciously of what we think about and what we do. So this forgiveness means going back to the state of mind we were in. You can think about it as the Garden of Eden state of mind. When we knew that we were one with life. So, Course in Miracles says, took you millions of years to get the way you are right now. So don't think you're going to change it overnight. So it's this progress that we're trying to make, to come to that place in our minds where we see that we're one with life. This is that ultimate forgiveness, this radical forgiveness, where we see that all of these things that happen, really not a thing at all. It's not a thing. It's just a passing experience. So let's remember to forget it.